So many strong ideas, he's creative to the core. Evan White, cause he's been at it for 20 whole years with plenty to show for his illustrious career. So if you're looking to grow your brand, then Evan White is here. Cause talent tech PR is sure to take you very far. The HR tech space has a fresh face, and it'll make your brand a star. Spinning straw into gold and taking flight, you'll be soaring through the sky at incredible heights with talent tech PR from Evan White.
Good morning, everyone.
Hello.
That's my jam, guys.
I know.
That's
I
like-
will never
yeah.
not smile when I hear that song.
I love watching the three of us all sort of like bopping around on our cameras as it's playing.
Amazing. Welcome, everyone, to the HR Morning Show, the #1 spot for all things HR. We're part of Purple Acorn Network. After the show, you can learn more about Purple Acorn by going to purpleacornnetwork.com. And thanks to Calendar PA for sponsoring, and also Talent Tech PR. And I just want to know, how is everyone doing? How are you doing, Mike?
I am good. I'm so excited when I saw the co-host this week where me and you, I was like, all right, I get to connect with Rhona. I'm here. It's Tuesday morning, right? I'm back
Yeah.
from Dallas last week from Sherm Talent, and excited to talk HR like I always am.
Are you really
Serge
always
is here.
excited? Yeah, you're excited about talking about HR?
I love talking about HR. It's like all I do 24/7. People ask me like what my hobbies are now. I'm like, I don't know if I have them anymore, right? I have kids, and then those aren't hobbies though. And I when you've built sort of this like what started as a side thing and turned into a main thing like me, just like talking about HR and the internet, it's just like, oh my God, everything I do now, like I like clock out from like an HR job and then just like make HR content for the internet.
How was Sherm Talent?
It was fun. It was my first Sherm event. It's different than a lot of other ones, and but it was a good time. I got to speak. I was on a panel, and talking about velocity in HR and velocity in resumes, and getting to, I don't know. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. It was fun to go to a different kind of event. I think what's cool about the Sherm events, I've never been there, is they spend a lot of money theming the event, which was fun. Giant cowboy hats and boots everywhere. And, I'm not personally, as an Eagles fan, the city of Dallas is just not a place I like to be. But, I made the most of it, and we got to experience the city a little bit. My son, who I'm like raising as an Eagles fan, just like told me, he's like, you have to go there and like yell at everyone. I'm like, yeah, that's what I'll do. It's fine.
Yeah, that sounds.
That sounds like a thing to do. What have you been up to, Serge?
I was reading the notes before the show, and this is our 85th episode. And do you remember? So last year at Sherm, not Sherm Talent, we
Sure.
co-hosted the 50th episode. We're getting so close to the 100th. I think we'll get there probably by Sherm World. I think we're going to get there anyways. But aside from that, I've been very, very busy living in the HR world as everyone is. It's a really rough place to be right now, but it's also a very interesting one. There's a lot going on. I was actually just checking the news before I came on, and here in Canada, our economy is a little bit different. Our job market is a little bit different, but it's very similar in a lot of ways. But one of our biggest employer in the country is laying off 25,000 employees. So half of the workforce. This is like the biggest company in Canada, or the most recognized one internally. It's like a large telecom provider. It makes me a little bit nervous about what's going on out there. Not to start the morning in a negative light, but it's a rough space.
I mean, I think all of us who work in HR and TA are like seeing that. And this is a good segue probably into our headlines.
Perfect.
So we have two headlines this morning to get into that I think are both for people in our space, things we look at and are just sort of like, yeah, obviously, but always worth talking about and digging into. And the first is an article that was in the Wall Street Journal yesterday. I think it was yesterday, and it excited me a lot to see. The headline being the AI splurge is costing big tech its workforce. And right, this article is essentially talking about the fact that we've seen it. It's happening, right? Amazon and Google and big tech and Meta and Block and everyone, right? We're doing all these layoffs. We're blaming AI. We've talked a lot on this show and anywhere we all talk about how is this really kind of just AI whitewashing and probably not actually all because of AI. But the crux of it is really that this spending is on AI, right? The reason this layoffs are happening, even if you're not replacing people with AI, is because companies are investing more into it. And in this article, it even talked about that, like between like the big four tech companies, they're estimated to spend almost $700 billion or something like that, or on AI infrastructure, and they're doing this at the expense of their products and their workers and their customers. Right? None of these products have really seen themselves or shown themselves to be profitable yet. And it's almost a game of chicken is what this article talks about, of like how deep can these companies cut, how many people can they let go and still try and kind of maintain this, as they're all scared to stop spending and not be the first one that hits this like finish line, whatever it might be, with getting there with AI. So it's an interesting conversation to start happening. um, you know the other things the article goes into is how investors love this, because the reason we see stock prices go up is because investors love the like revenue per employee number,
Yeah.
and that by default is going to go up when you have less employees, and that's why we always see that quick spike. But like that's a short term idea. So I ranted about this on the internet yesterday for quite a while. It was just sort of this no duh moment, but I'm excited to talk about it with other people instead of just me to a camera.
Yeah, no, I was excited to see this too, mostly just like you, because it's like, okay, we're finally talking about what we really need to be talking about this whole situation, because it's like whether we're replacing people with AI or whatever is happening, the truth is people are losing their jobs, the
Hmm.
economy is being impacted, people like everything, it's a trickle down thing. And meanwhile, we're just kind of like sitting around waiting to see what these people figure out to do. And eh, we can all see where this is headed. Why they can't is something that I do not understand.
Yeah, and what's interesting is like there's a couple of different ways it could be heading, I think too, but um, the like least likely one at this point feels like all of these companies just make a ton of money and all hit like perfection with AI very quickly. And we're seeing it in like AI. One of the things this article even talks about is like AI doesn't have a good public perception, right? It is seen as something being forced on most people. It is seen as something that people fear is going to cost them their jobs and wreck the economy, like at a higher level than it even is, and likely at a higher level than it even will. But the fear is there. So when you're cutting customer service and all these kind of people from your companies and forcing your customers to start using AI, and AI customer service is not working well at a lot of companies, like it's just there's so many potential downfalls and issues happening that have basically been ignored by these companies at the idea of just like stock prices are going up.
It's kind of wild. It's like, I don't know. I don't get it. I don't understand why it's happening. But I'm glad that journalists are starting to talk about it, because I think that's really the more we talk about it, the more we're like, hey, hello, what are we going to do about this? Something will happen, hopefully, because it's like, I'm just really tired of the normalization, I guess is the word, of like, oh, 10,000 people are getting laid off, or 20,000. It's like, no, these aren't numbers that we're
Yeah,
supposed to be. This is not normal,
it
guys.
used to be a big deal. Yeah, and it's become so normalized in that, and it's just kind of like right, I was going to make a metaphor I don't want to make, but there are things that have just sort of like as society has changed, used to be like this, like everyone stop and take note idea, like moment. And now things happen that we're just like, oh, it happened again. And we're seeing that with layoffs at these companies, right? It's just almost like nobody even cares anymore. The bad news comes and it blows off, and the next news comes from somebody else, and a new product gets released, and we talk about that instead. And there is a limit to this, right? These companies can only cut so many people in order to increase revenue a little bit, when they have to keep growing. And I talked about this on LinkedIn, and there was one comment from an AI recruiter on my post, and like looking at them, it felt like one of those like AI names that
I
people
was
use
like, what is an
now.
AI recruiter?
I think just like if I call myself an AI recruiting expert before others do, I'll be who people come to for that. It felt like, but they were like, oh, we have to give people a chance, think about all the jobs that are going to be created in the infrastructure space. And it's just like, I've been hearing give billionaires a few more breaks and they'll create jobs for since the 80s.
Mhm.
So let's see that happen before we just again assume that's what they're going to do with all this extra spending. So it's gonna be interesting to see. Like Amazon is on pace to burn money this year, which they've only done once since 2003, and that was when they invested in Rivian, and that went terribly for them. But beyond that, like it's not slowed down growth. They're going to lose cash this year. Which will they be fine? Of course, they're Amazon. But the
Yeah.
idea that that's happening because they're just spending at such a high rate, is something to take note of.
I don't know if they're stopping to consider that if no one has a job, you don't have consumers to buy your stuff anyway. So it's like, why are we even doing this? But oh
Yeah,
well.
and we'll see how bad that gets, right? It's a totally different news story, but the CEO of Verizon, right, saying he expects unemployment to go to 30%, which is an astronomical and not true number because that'd be 50 million people. And like what that really just means to me is he plans to lay off 30% of his company, and assumes that's the same thing. Right, this is where we're allowing people who aren't experts on the economy to pretend they are just because they happen to be good at like keeping the ball rolling at a company like Verizon. But yeah, at some point, there are not going to be people spending this money anymore, especially when they don't want a lot of these AI products, right? I think that's like, that's not being talked about a lot. I mean, we're all
Yeah.
AI forward on this show, right? We use it in plenty of ways. We talk about it. But most people still are not and don't want to just be investing and spending money on everything turned to AI, and building a product, spending all your company's money on a product that your consumers don't seem to want, doesn't feel like a great like thing to be doing.
You would think that billionaires and people with successful companies would know this, but what do we know?
Yeah.
Let's move on to our next headline, which I love it. Don't we all love a made up word for things? So, hiring needs to enter its seduction era,
Hmm. Hmm.
talent acquisition process. Can you tell us about this one, Mike?
Yeah, it's funny because I saw this headline and in my mind I was like, "Oh, this is probably about like employer branding and how it's important to attract good employees." I was like, "Yeah, companies do need to do that." But what it turns out we are calling the seduction era in talent acquisition is what recruiters for years have called sourcing. Um, in this article, there's I'm even trying to kind of find the quote that says like, "We have to find a reason to seduce people away from their job. We have to upskill our TA teams. Recruiters have gotten a bit lazy," which is true in some regards. "We want to upskill them and help them use tools that make them more successful and strategic in nature." So it's a whole article about calling the idea of recruiters finding passive candidates, giving them reasons to leave their company, the seduction era. Which I would love to start calling it that. I would love to like have on my resume just like seduced 70% of new hires away from previous companies.
I know it's so wild how they come up with these words. I mean, I guess it's for clicks and they get people to read it. But yeah, like you, I thought it was going to be about talent attraction. That's my jam. So I was
Hmm.
excited. And that's like, oh. we're talking about sourcing, which nothing wrong with sourcing. We've all done it. It's what it's like, and not even for like the seduction era, in my mind, is for everything. Even inbound candidates, you still have to give people like
Yes.
a reason to want to work at your company. So it's like, are you just talking about recruiting? Like
Yeah.
it was
I,
interesting.
I do like the unspoken part of that article, like you said, that basically just like implies that like for those of you who are applying to jobs, you can go get effed. Like we don't actually care about seducing you or interesting you in our company in any way. And it's funny because this article ends with a literal quote from this person that says, "You have to be able to seduce them. Can you take them through the process where they're going to accept your role? Have you helped remove all the other options for them and convince them that you're the place that they have to be and to not take a counteroffer?" Now, look, that is 100% accurate. That's just also called recruiting. That's just what good recruiters do. So I guess I'm more concerned, like, is this someone writing an article and just calling a new name? Like, or have recruiters forgotten because the job market is so bad and right, we have so many unlimited options when we hire that like you actually do have to do some work to make candidates want to work there. Like if we've got to that point where they need that reminder, like that's also very scary to me.
I mean, I think it happens because we've seen the market go up and down. We've seen it be a candidate's market. We've seen it be an employer's market. And I think usually when we're in this type of market, yeah, people forget. Some people, I will say, I will not say everyone. Some people forget that, yeah, like we are, like people have choices. Candidates have choices. And just because there's an abundance of candidates right now doesn't mean that you don't still have to give them an option, like seduce them and sell them on your company, because it's very short-sighted to think that you don't have to, because that impacts your retention, right?
Yeah. And I can tell you, as someone who still actively like recruits, and I had a problem recently with a CEO who just sort of thought like everyone should want to work at my company no matter what, and was just like messaging people sort of like punching way out of their weight class. Which go for it, that's fine. You have applicants, but like you're trying to pull in like the golden standard in your eyes. And they'd answer because the CEO messaged them, but then they'd get through the process and like drop out, and they're like, "Well, why? Like, what's happening?" I was like, "Because this isn't a place yet that people that want to come do this job." Like, and I think a lot of times it's just put on a recruiter, like convince them it's that place, and just like no. Sometimes that starts from the top, and well, not sometimes. That all the time starts from the top and works its way through the company. That it turns out you actually have to make your company the place you for the talent you want to have, not just hire and train your recruiters to be the art of seduction. Maybe they can go read that mystery book. Was that his name? Remember that? Am
Yeah.
I dating myself? Was his name Mystery, the dating guy, who wrote a whole book on just like how to date people by negging them and seduce them? Maybe that's what recruiters are gonna have to go out and start doing.
Who
Maybe you're just
knows?
not good enough to work in my company. I really love the way that you thought about it. That you wore those comfortable shoes to the interview. I'm just weird dating advice now. I'm very sorry. This is the stuff that they used to teach. This is the stuff they used to teach me as a young man of how to
N-
act. And now we seem to be asking our recruiters to do it.
It's, I mean, we definitely have to always, as recruiters, I think, remember that we're always like, this is not new. So glad we saw this article, glad people are talking about it. I just hope it's not something like you said, that it's a reminder that people need. It's like, no, this is literally every recruiter should read this article and be like, yeah, duh, this is what we've been doing, type of thing.
Yeah, and CEOs, please don't read this article and say like, yeah, they just need to be better at seducing and everything will be fine.
Yes, let's please not talk about seducing in in the context of hiring people, please, please. So this has been great, as always. So fun catching up on headlines and just talking about this. And now we're moving on to our first guest. Hello, old friend.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Yeah, it's been a while. Well, actually, it hasn't been too long. I did see you at HR at a Transform.
Transform. Yes,
Yes.
yes. But It's been so long since we've co-hosted a show, so I was excited to see you as the guest today. But for people who haven't met you, like me, Jocelyn, can you let us know a bit about you and what you do?
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Jocelyn King. I'm the CEO of a company called VirgilHR. We are an employment and labor law compliance software for HR professionals. And I was an HR professional my whole career. I had a really big pain point with just trying to dig through and figure out what laws I had to comply with, and all the states that my employees were in, et cetera. Built this tool to help HR professionals out.
Yes, Jocelyn is someone that I uh, I always respect and love the people that love compliance, because I was always like, that's not my jam. I was maybe not the favorite recruiter for the compliance folks, but that's a whole other conversation.
I mean, if you're trying to seduce candidates, I would imagine not Rhona.
I know. I was like, yeah, this is I actually was going to ask you about the whole seducing term, because maybe not that term internally. But today I'm excited to talk to you about something new that you guys have recently launched at Virgil HR, called Skill Path. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes, so SkillPath is our new LMS. It is attached directly to our compliance platform. And really, we built it because HR teams are stretched really thin, and training sometimes takes a back seat. It's, managed through spreadsheets and disconnected systems and inbox reminders. And so it's really difficult. So what we do is we're kind of bringing training into the same compliance platform that our customers already trust, and making it easier to assign courses, track completion, maintain documentation, etc. And we do this by offering over 650 compliance and professional development courses for our HR practitioners to leverage and assign to their employees. They can do kind of learning paths directly within the tool as well, monitor who's done what, and do reporting that's needed for their company too.
That's so cool. Why did you guys, like, take me behind the why you guys decided to do this? I probably have an idea of why, but why did you guys decide to add this on to already amazing product?
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of organizations that can't afford an LMS. And an LMS is also built for organizations that sometimes have very complex requirements. And we wanted to build something that was going to be more simple and easy for the SMB space to use, while still making it super affordable as well. So we spent a good part of last year building it out, and have been working with a fantastic content provider, Cogno, to help us with that. And really, I mean, just for myself and the experience that I have, I've worked for small businesses, I've worked for big ones, but particularly with the small ones, it was always really hard because we couldn't get a budget for an LMS. And then when we did, we're not necessarily learning professionals, so configuring it correctly was also a really big pain point too. So we eliminate all of that.
That is amazing. And now let's talk a bit more about Virgil, because in general, I've always been so, I guess, grateful that something like this exists, and that someone like you, who knows it, who's been in HR, who like actually knows what people need, is behind building this. So tell us a bit more about any new things you guys have thinking of, or any, just talk about Virgil HR, the product itself.
Sure, yeah. Well, like I said, I built it when I had a big pain point. We are the only compliance platform that's built by HR professionals. And so it's really indicative when you go into the platform and start using it for the first time that this was an HR person who had designed it. And that was really important to me. We have, over the last 4.5 years, built out an amazing product that covers, I think, close to 15 feature sets, everything from a chatbot to an employee handbook builder to legal updates, task automation. So if, a state changes their minimum wage, you have to provide notice to your employees. So we create tasks for you with that notice so that you remember that this is something you have to do. And in many cases, you might not even know you have to do it.
Exactly, because it changes so quickly that like keeping up with that is hard on top of everything else that you're doing.
Yes, and automation is the key word for absolutely everything we do. That was really important to me. I wanted to make things proactive rather than the traditional reactive compliance. So now we're introducing an AI bot that is kind of like our 2.0. That will come out this summer, which I'm very excited about, along with a whole new set of features. And also something I'm truly excited about is we are launching Virgil Canada this summer as well. So we're moving into the international space.
I'm so excited for you guys because I just, I like you. I love your team. Everyone that I've met is amazing, really believes in what they're doing. So I'm excited to see you guys expand into Canada as well.
Thank you.
I know something that you've always been an advocate of is like AI in HR and using it responsibly and learning about that. You've heard all the conversations that we had about like AI and the layoffs and everything that's happening. What are your thoughts as far as like what HR professionals should be doing and like being aware of with AI?
Yeah, I think there are a couple things. The first is data. Where is the data coming from that AI is being trained on? And so, whenever you are evaluating an HR tech provider that has an AI product, you'll want to ask, hey, where's your training data coming from? Because what you don't want happening, and we've talked about this a lot, is algorithmic bias, right? Or simply, in the case of compliance, incorrect information.
Yes.
So we can't have that. All of our data, for example, was written and researched by labor and employment attorneys. But there are some providers out there that scrape the internet. Could you imagine if you were depending on Wikipedia when you're about to terminate somebody? So you want to be really careful about data. Then the other piece is like the decision making around the output that AI is giving you. So, for example, if you were to use AI to make certain decisions around hiring, you could inevitably and unintentionally be responsible for discriminatory acts. And so we're seeing, more and more kind of lawsuit activity that really is, at the moment going to set a precedent for who's responsible for the decisions that are made. So decision making is really critical, and all of that comes from the data that they're using.
Yeah, I think that's a really important call out because what we're seeing now, we're seeing different, like who is going to ultimately be liable for these things. It's like, is it the company? Is it the company hiring, right? Or is it the vendor, or like who is going to be? And we're still in that like weird period where, like you said, set a precedent, what's going to happen. So it's important to be asking these questions because I might not be in corporate every day, but I do get, because of what I do, talk to so many vendors and everything has AI, AI, AI. So it's really important to be asking these questions because they need to be asked.
Yes, they do. And that was something we were really careful with. And I think a big reason why we have waited as long as we have to introduce our new AI bot is because with compliance, you have to be right 100% of the time. And the tech wasn't there before. And now we're getting closer to that.
Yeah, and with compliance, I mean, I would be so scared if anyone out there is relying on things like ChatGPT or Claude or whatever to figure out what they need to be doing to stay compliant. That is a very, very scary spot to be in because they scrape Reddit. They scrape, it's like, this is not where you want to be getting your legal information. And just, it's, as an HR professional, I don't think it's ethical to be. It's like if back in the day you said like we would go to Wikipedia and be like, hey, so what's the minimum wage or whatever somewhere type of thing.
Right. I tried using Wikipedia as a source in college. And I wasn't able to get away with that. So people in the business setting shouldn't be using it either.
Exactly. One other thing, kind of before we wrap, that I haven't spoken to you about, but you, a few months ago, launched a new podcast. Can you tell us a bit about that?
I did, yes. So it's a podcast by HR for HR. And what we do is we have other HR professionals join us on the podcast and just talk about their experience, particularly as it relates to what can sometimes be more complex or nuanced topics within HR. So, for example, there are a lot of HR professionals that might not be as familiar with organization development. That's a specialty. So, having HR professionals come in and talk about their experience in OD in a very tangible way where you can take kind of action items and apply them to your workplace is really important to me as an output of this podcast. So we launch an episode usually every week, every other week, and I would highly encourage anybody to take a look at it. We've had some fun episodes.
Yes, and it is on the Purple Acorn Network, so you can find it at purpleacornnetwork.com. I have really enjoyed this conversation as always, Jocelyn. Where can listeners and viewers connect with you?
Yeah, best place is going to be on LinkedIn. Just Jocelyn King with VirgilHR. I'd love to connect. I can talk all things compliance, but I'm also happy to talk about anything HR related too.
Amazing. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Madeline, welcome to the iCIMS Talk Nerdy segment. How are you?
I'm doing well, Trent. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
I am so excited. So we've been keeping a secret since, let's see, Tim and I started talking about this in July. You and Tim and I put this together like literally on the back of a napkin in October at HR Tech. Do you want to tell everyone what we've been working on?
Yeah, we've literally been putting that. We started with a napkin and jotting down ideas and models, and it just went from there. But what we really wanted to do was look at the reality of AI adoption in talent acquisition. We're calling this the definitive guide of AI adoption and talent acquisition. And it's not kind of that broad report we've done and we've been guilty of doing, and we've seen in the market where companies are saying, are companies using AI? Who's using AI? Why are they using AI? We've moved past that. We know companies are using it. We know there's obviously a increased amount of adoption in AI, but we want to see where they're using it and how they're using it across every single process. So we looked at everything from sourcing to screening, interview assessment, communication, and looked at every single process of where AI is being used. And then we looked at it across experiences, the recruiter experience, the hiring manager experience. You and I have had so many conversations around that.
Gosh, yes.
And then the candidate experience. And we wanted to see how AI is kind of moving the needle on those experiences. And
no, I was just going to say, can you tell everyone, because we're not talking about you talk to like 10 or 15 companies. You talk to a very nice sample set across industries. Can you kind of let us know the sample size?
Yeah, we got 412 responses to the survey, and we looked at companies that were only 250 employees and above. So we really tried to kind of knock out some of those really small organizations. We actually had a really nice sample size of almost half of respondents with over 5,000 employees.
Wow.
So we really wanted to look at complex organizations and companies that are even in high growth mode and how they're approaching AI and talent acquisition. And the other piece of it too, that I think was really important, and some of the most surprising results were in this area, is around responsible AI. So we wanted to look at governance models. We wanted to look at, are being transparent with candidates? Are we asking candidates if they can opt out at any point in the process? And we wanted to really look at that responsible AI approach as well.
And if you ask me what was the one stat that gave me the most heartburn, it was the percentage of companies that have no governance framework. Because I think I even messaged you, said, is that number right? Like you can't tell me that 50% of enterprise level companies have no governance framework whenever they're looking at AI. That would be the first thing I fixed if I went back into that kind of space. So headline, what percentage of the respondents are using AI in talent acquisition?
So we found 69% are using AI in talent acquisition. And I think that's what we kind of expected to see. It's obviously the big
Yeah.
topic. It's companies are using it in some way or another. We all use it in our personal lives. So that wasn't super surprising. I will say it's a significant change from when we asked that question in 2020, and only around 40% were using AI
Interesting.
at that time. So it is, obviously we're seeing more adoption. But what was
Hmm.
interesting is when we asked, okay, how are you using it? Are you using it to support one area? Are you not sure how you're using it? Only 18% of companies were using it throughout their talent acquisition process. So
Hmm.
a lot of room for growth.
And I think what was interesting is that you said that the highest use or like where they're looking at pointing AI is like very specific use cases. So I think it kind of makes sense that only 18% are saying how do we do it everywhere, but every organization is kind of going, how do I fix this one problem with AI? Where did you find that AI sits in the TA tech stack, and were there any surprises in that?
Yeah, screening is obviously the big topic, and we're seeing so many companies even launching AI screening tools. But that was obviously the number one area. We've really shifted in talent acquisition from thinking about, okay, how do we attract
Hmm.
candidates, to now how do we manage volume, and screening and AI. The role AI plays in screening is significant. So that was kind of the top use case. Communication assessments, I think, was big. That was very interesting. We've had lots of
That
conversations around the
was, yeah.
assessment piece, but that came up very high.
Hmm.
And it makes sense with how that's being used. And then sourcing was obviously a big use case for AI.
But it kind of makes sense because if we look at and I've got other data from internal where we're asking them like where's the stress in the recruiting funnel, and it's not top of funnel, it's in that screening and interviewing, both on the candidate point of view and the hiring manager point of view. So it's kind of cool to see your independent research come in and validate that's one of the use cases that they're trying to see, can AI fix this?
Yeah.
But it's also those two are the most risky if you look
Riskiest.
at that's what surprised me.
Hmm. Same. And that's obviously what we saw in the data too. Like the highest areas of risk were interview and assessment. That's where decision making can
Mhm.
happen. And bias often weaves its ugly little head into that
Yeah.
process as well. The interesting thing in the survey data too is that only 12% of companies said they're confident that AI is reducing bias, but we're seeing this increase in using it. And I think that's an education piece as well for a lot of
Yeah.
companies. It's like we have to understand that, first of all, not all AI solutions are the same, and also it can be a very powerful tool in helping to reduce bias early in the process, but also in some of these areas as well. And I think when I think about the interview and assessment piece of it, for so long that's been almost ignored. Companies would
Mhm.
spend tons of money on attraction, like millions of dollars on advertising, trying to invest in employer branding in a meaningful way. And then you'd get to the interview process. And even for high volume or frontline workers, it can be 4 weeks until you're scheduled for an
Right.
interview. I mean, that is just not going to work,
Mhm.
especially for frontline hiring. So it's all that money to me is wasted. You're spending millions of dollars on advertising, and now you're losing quality talent or not giving everyone a fair opportunity just because that interview process is broken.
Yeah, and looking at the data, I was I was up not upset. I was bothered by the lack of governance, but I was somewhat consoled whenever I look at the couple of different personas, like where the judgment, well, like where they're willing to hand over some of the decision making. To me, it's right in line with exactly where we need to be according to the technology. So, did you want to talk a little bit about things that you learned about the three personas that are involved, how they're using, leveraging, and feeling about AI?
Yeah, so I think the recruiter experience, so we've talked so much about efficiency. We know that
Hmm.
AI is helping recruiters, saving them time, improving that experience. Recruiters are being tasked to do more with less. They're overworked. There's a huge burden being placed on that recruiter experience, and AI can play a huge role in helping that. What was interesting is we asked a question around does AI improve efficiency or decision making? And then we have to follow up about the recruiter's role. Can recruiters override decisions that AI is being made, so that even if we're thinking about AI to enable better decision making, are recruiters still in control of this experience? And we found for the first question that AI actually is being thought of more as efficiency, and that makes sense for where we're at today,
Right.
although there's huge potential. And then most organizations, recruiters can override those decisions and can override the AI. So I think it's, right now we're kind of looking at AI as improving efficiency for recruiters, but there's tremendous potential to enable decision making and help recruiters evolve in their role in a very different way than what we've seen before. The hiring manager experience is interesting because and this is all credit to you, because we talked about this report. We were really thinking about recruiter, we were thinking about the candidate, and it was like so cool to think about both perspectives. And you were like, hiring manager is the experience that everyone's really needs to be thinking about today.
Yeah.
This is where a lot of the decision making happens, and we know that this is where a lot of the challenges in talent acquisition can happen as well. And we found that hiring managers really are users of AI. They're using AI and they want to use AI within talent acquisition. And the same is true for candidates too. I think there's this idea that AI will make the process less human, or candidates don't want to use it. But we found that actually it can create a much more human experience if candidates are receiving consistent communication and they know where they're at in the process. The other piece that we looked at, and this is credit to you too, I believe this was your idea, is around do candidates have visibility that
Yes.
AI is being used? Is there transparency around where AI is being used? And is that being communicated? Not only is there transparency, but how is that being communicated to candidates? And we looked at that too. And that was surprising to me, that there's not as much transparency around the use of AI for candidates as there should be.
Yeah, that one was actually Tim. I think I was his amen.
Yeah.
The candidate clarity and transparency. I kind of piggyback on what Tim does. I was his amen corner. And on the hiring manager piece, I'm actually I was talking with our CEO just kind of about his views on the market and everything. And he said this statement, and I told him I was going to say that it was my own, but I'll give him credit this one time. He said that we're so focused on where the value is actually created, largely around revenue for any company, and that starts with creating the right team. So in order to create the right team, we need to really kind of focus on how is the hiring manager, like what's that experience like. And I thought that was just a very unique way of looking at, okay, this is a persona that we've ignored for so long. How do we go back and fix that problem? So I love the research around it. So the report should be coming out soon. I know we are both, Aptitude is going to post it. We're going to post it. We're super excited. But if someone reads this and they want to get more into the research, where can they connect with you?
Yeah, it's a great question. So like you said, the report will be on both of our websites. LinkedIn is probably the best way to connect with me. And also my email is Madeline at aptituderp.com. So either one.
Yes.
And this was like a very fun project and report to do
was.
together. So if
It
anyone
was.
wants to talk about it, I'd love to talk about it. It's funny, and I'll share this too with the audience. When we do a survey, so the report is really based on two things. It's based on quantitative data through a survey and analysis of the survey, and then it's based on a lot of interviews and conversations that the whole team had together. We've all kind of brought that qualitative perspective to the report. The quantitative piece is the survey results, and we had a first readout of what those results would be. And I, putting it together, oh my goodness. And then when we all got together on a very large call and went through that first readout, I think everyone was like, wow, there's an opportunity here in this market to look at this in a much deeper way than what we've been looking at it before.
Yeah, and this is going to be a surprise to probably Jody and Carly, my bosses, but I've been using it, meeting with clients and prospects in the market, because the data is just so good. But I put everybody under embargo, so you cannot share any of this until the report is live. But I can tell you, there's a need for this. Like, to quote our friend Tim Sackett, he said that there's been a lot of sizzle, but not a lot of steak whenever it comes to AI and TA. And I think that this report is definitely a step in the right direction for getting those questions answered. So I thoroughly enjoy this process. Can't wait to work on the next project together.
Same here. Thank you, Trent.
All right, I'll kick it back over to the host.
All right. Amazing. Amazing to hear. I love insights. I love every time Trent gets to come on and talk through some of this data. Just want to remind everyone, we are brought to you today by Talent Tech PR and Evan White. You heard the song at the beginning. We all danced to it. We loved it. Evan White has been in the HR and PR space for so long. If you've been to any live events, you have seen the things he is putting on. We were just at SHRM Talent last week, and he worked with teams putting on huge barbecue sets in the middle and the best happy hours you're ever going to see. And if you are looking for a way to get your name out there and your business growing, most of us have been working with Evan in some way for a very long time. And thank you to Talent Tech PR for making sure that the morning show is able to run. And with that, we're going to move on to our next guest. Hello, Santani. How are you?
I'm doing good, Mike. How are you?
Good. Glad we got a chance to connect and talk. I was excited to have you on. I've been digging in a bit and kind of learning some more. But before I do, because I am a recruiter and I have to do something like this, and I know a lot of our audience may be kind of meeting you for the first time, and tell us a little bit about yourself. What gets you on here today?
Absolutely. So I met Evan at the shows, and that's how we connected. I actually don't have an typical HR background, but I've been doing startups for 12 years now. And a part of doing startups is to hire people. None of my startups initially had any budget. So I did all the hiring from ground up till a Series A phase for almost 4 startups. And I understand the HR's pain and trauma only too well without being a professional recruiter. And when I started Neuroscale, I'm a co-founder and chief business officer. When we got this company started, we really wanted to solve the problem that, to be honest, AI is great. It's solving a lot of things, but it's also bringing a lot of issues at the wake, which we all heard today in the show, and it's the news and headlines and everybody the issues that the professionals talked about are so prominent, and they have been circulating. There is a lot of fear in the market, and that was one of the reasons I personally wanted to get involved in this space to try to solve. We are not a typical Silicon Valley startup. We started actually in the Washington, D.C. area, trying to solve the challenge for the federal government because they are high stake, mission critical business problems, and they cannot deal with ambiguity or lawsuits or explainability issues or bias issues. So that's where Neuroscale got started. We developed a recruiting software platform for the federal government, which was extremely auditable and transparent AI. And since then, we have gone commercial because the enterprise clients need the same level of transparency and security. And for the last few months, we have been seeing more and more reasons to build a more enterprise grade product.
Sure. No, I think obviously government's a good place to start with a lot of this stuff. And it's funny because I feel like 6 months ago, nobody was talking about, the legal issues and the transparency and sort of all these sides. And all of a sudden, right, it's turned to be the thing that everyone's talking about, which is great. I'm glad we got there, of course. Right, there were people sort of seeing this coming. And now it's sort of like this topic. So like one of the things that sort of jumped out, right, I was looking at Neuroscale, which is funny because we were both at SHRM Talent.
Yeah.
I didn't see you guys there. I would have loved to kind of like stop by and talk. I'm notoriously bad at that. I just like roam up and down and don't approach booths because I'm just like, I'm not your customers usually. But seeing this is sort of cool. So I know you guys are built a lot on like actual like not using black box AI and making sure this sort of stuff comes around, right? So like how I guess how much, right? How does that lead into building this, right? The idea of like, let's make sure that we're not setting these companies up for the same lawsuits that we know so many others will be coming.
Yeah. So Jocelyn brought up a really good point about data. Where is your training data coming from? We were very focused on that. Our sister concern has been running a training school for more than 11 years. We actually have one of the largest digital meetup group in the country, and that's just like we try to educate people on cybersecurity, regular security, system infrastructure. So it's an IT company, but also a training school. And part of the training school's agenda was to train veterans and place them into big, like civilian businesses like Dell, Microsoft, or the big shots. So we had to build resumes. Most veterans don't even have they're starting from a blank page, right? We have to translate their skill set into real civilian business context, and that trained us really well in how resumes are read and how they're built and how they're crafted. So we had 11 years of experience with that data. Obviously, we synthesized all of that, scrubbed the real names, PII information, but our product is trained on real HR data, which makes it really interesting from a auditability standpoint because the AI is able to show its work. Hey, I connected this dot with this dot because you told me these are
Hmm.
relatable. And it kind of maps out the entire report. So every single person that gets evaluated, and it's multimodal. So you can do video, audio, resumes, documents, PDFs, even for portfolios. So any kind of product, it actually gives a very detailed report about why it is coming up with certain numbers and ranks. And that prevents companies, if there is a lawsuit or there is a claim of discrimination, you now have a time-stamped audit report that was generated when the evaluation was done on spot. And that was why the government, gave us the initial fund to build the product for them.
Yeah. No, I think that's so important. I think that and when I was at Shermtown, I spoke on a panel. One of the things is I asked the people in the audience was just like, how many of you know like what goes into like the decisions that some of your tools are doing, right? And nobody does. They think they do, right? They think it's because there's this keyword match or whatever sort of in there,
Right.
but like really no. Like if someone sat you down and was like, why was this person ranked number one? Would you be able to answer? I'm curious, sort of like, are you seeing with companies that right use Neuroscale, like them taking the time to make sure that like recruiters kind of understand, like, here's how to really dig into these reports and read them?
Yeah, most people actually come to us because of that extra layer of security and safety net. So most of our clients are big enterprise clients that are
Hmm.
worried about jumping the gun. They're more traditional businesses that have waited to adopt AI because they were already on the fence. They didn't know there are too many tools. I mean, I track some of our competitors. There are 76 and counting, right? Just from sourcing standpoint, with things become easy, like anybody can get up tomorrow. I
Yep.
can vibe code my way into a AI tool,
Hmm.
and sure, sometimes they work, but the other times all you need is a moderate hacker and all of your data is gone. When companies like Mercor, $10 billion businesses are getting their data breached, it's a really big risk in the market that you have to account for. So the traditional businesses have waited to jump into it. Like I'm
Hmm.
talking about banks, financial institutions, big IT companies. And now they're coming to us because we have the federal vote, like seal of approval. So they're like, okay, if the government feels good about you guys, you probably built it mindfully, we can trust you, and then go through the process. But yes, we do almost 2 months of onboarding. We are very hands on with all our recruiters. We are not going to be like, hey, SaaS platform, here you go, you figure it out. It's very
Yeah.
intuitive, but we still talk about best practices and try to work with every recruiter that are on the platform to make sure they're getting most out of the system.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think that's it's something not enough people are saying and admitting, right? That like anyone can do this stuff and it's quick. And I just I did a video recently where I vibe coded like what would just be a scam job searching
Yep.
platform essentially. And I was like, look, it's up and running. And if I connected my Stripe to this right now, I could start taking your payments. Like, and it really was that fast. And I see them and I see, I think it's, I see people talking about like, oh, there's this new one and this new one, it does this. And you ask the slightest question, right? And like there's not an answer anywhere. And like you walk around the floor at Sherm Talent or HR Tech or Unleash, and you start asking salespeople like these questions about where it goes and where it comes from, and they don't know it. So it's very, for someone like me who's sort of just been like tracking that and talking to these companies about it for a long time, it's very refreshing to sort of hear like here's where we started and here's what we're kind of implementing. So it's amazing. Now I'm assuming, right? So you were Sherm Talent. I know you were at Unleash. I think
Yep, we were at
everything's
Unleash, Transform. We
yeah,
did all the shows this year.
yeah. HR Tech coming up. Will we see
Yep.
you there?
Yes,
Um,
we'll go to HR Tech, and we are also going to Shoreham National. Um, just because like if you're in the HR circuit, you have to be there. A lot of our customers will be there. So
Yeah, you got to make the rounds. Amazing. Well, I'm sorry we didn't get to meet when we were there, but I am looking forward to some of these next events and sort of making sure I take the time to come in and talk about it. I think that
absolutely.
that I think the sound of this, I think security and safety is so important, and that we're finally hearing some people focus on it after just this race of just how much money can we spend on AI, worry about the rest later. I'm glad we're at the later, I suppose, and people are worrying about it. So thank you for joining us this morning. I'm glad we were able to kind of come on. And I think we're going to throw over to the weather report with Serge, where we have some more of these fun stories to
Thank you,
talk about right
Mike.
now.
Thank you for having us,
Yeah,
having
of
me.
course. Yeah.
Good morning, beautiful people. Today in the HR weather, I found something that HR should be paying attention to. So, Meta is reportedly building an AI version of Mark Zuckerberg to communicate with employees. Not a system, actually represent him. On paper, maybe you can see the appeal, but this opens up a few real issues. First of all, how authentic does it feel if employees are hearing from AI instead of the actual CEO? What about the accountability in all of this? If the AI says something offside, who owns that? Because the AI said it isn't going to hold up, in my opinion. And the third thing is the employee experience. This might be efficient, but we're fooling ourselves if we think that leadership is just about information transfer. And I think there's a bigger context to all of this. Companies are already cutting roles while investing heavily in AI. So now you've got employees wondering, are we being replaced and now managed by AI too? That's a pretty tough spot to be culturally. So I guess the bottom line here is AI can support communication. I think we're all on board with that. But if it starts replacing leadership voices entirely, you're going to lose credibility with your own people. So if you're in HR right now, the move is pretty simple. You can use AI to amplify your leaders, not act as them. But like overall, I think this is just a really stupid idea, but maybe I'm just a jaded old man. So back to the panel. What do you
I
guys
hate,
think?
I hate it. 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 Throw me in the jaded old man party if that's what it is. But I don't think you are a jaded old man, at least not on this topic. I think this is just so easy to hate.
I know it's kind of depressing. Like I've been in the workforce for 25 years now, and just the thought of having your CEO being AI or communicating to you just seems, I don't know. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. Makes me feel really small. Makes me feel even less important than I would be in a corporation. And I think the majority of employees would feel exactly that way. But saying that, it is Mark Zuckerberg. Um, he just spent $60 billion trying to create the the Metasphere. That didn't work. So I really don't think this is going to work at all. But I could be wrong. Like Facebook is or Meta is also the company that's taking everyone's keystrokes and their keyboard type-ins to try to train their AI. So not surprising.
I mean, considering who's doing this, maybe his employees don't want to see him. But I think
Fair
in
enough.
general, this is not a good idea. Also, what message are we sending? Like, is the CEO even needed?
Yeah. That's such a good point, right? Do we even need CEOs? When we talk about roles that could be replaced by AI, maybe the first one we should look at is CEO,
My
right?
TikTok comments would agree with you. They say that many times when we talk about a lot of this. Yeah, I just don't get the point. And that's sort of brought up in the article of like, what's even the intention of this? Because, right, if you work at Meta, you work at any company really, like getting time from your CEO can feel nice. It can feel important, right? Like that one-on-one time. And like we've all been there. Um, but when it's just an AI like conversation, I'm not going home just like, oh yeah, I had like a really great convo
Yeah.
with like my AI version of my boss this week,
Yeah.
and this was going on. Like I just don't understand like who it's supposed to benefit. Like you might as well just put what he had to say into a memo or set a meeting with your direct manager instead or whatever it is. Like who's this for?
I- Is it possible, if you think about everything that we're trying to do with AI, and I'm a big proponent of AI, but also some days I feel like, get me off this bus, right? Like,
Hmm.
and if you now have AI being your CEO or communicating, like it's going to create a lot of pushback from employees on AI in general, right? Like we're already seeing pushback on AI marketing messages. Like if you look at
Hmm.
LinkedIn right now, every post is written by AI, and I don't go on LinkedIn anymore because nothing feels real until I see you guys' videos, which I know it's not AI, but I'm like, ah, get me off this bus. I want to retire now.
No, I know what you feel. I feel that, I mean, obviously I'm still on LinkedIn and will always be, but like I feel that in the comment section. It's like I miss
Hmm.
when humans were commenting on my post. I
Yeah.
really miss it.
Yeah, I've started having to delete AI comments. Which is because of my own selfish reasons. I recently looked up. There's like this. I'm holding my screwdriver up, by the way. I recently looked up my like authenticity score on this page that sort of like ranks and talks about influencers, and
Okay.
I had a low authenticity score, and it was because like of a bunch of AI comments, and it was like we have warning signs that show like this person is like manufactured like comments, and like I'm just like no, like I can't help that these bots are out there doing this stuff. So now I
What
just deleted them all.
what percentage of your comments are AI like communicated? Is it a large
I
percentage?
mean, it's lower,
Okay.
but I mean, even if I said 15, 20, right, that's still a lot. Right? That's
Yeah.
still especially on a post that maybe doesn't get as much engagement. Right? When you have 5 comments and 2 are AI comments, it really
Yeah.
stands out versus like 10 AI comments out of like 100. So I think that's a thing. But
And
you
before
even
for
brought up. Or so good.
I was going to say before for me it was like random AI bots or people that you knew weren't people commenting, but now it's like people I know
Hmm.
using AI comments and it's like,
Oh, interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, because they were told like you have to engage on 100 posts a day, right, to grow on LinkedIn. So
Yeah.
now they have a bot that just goes and like writes a weird story, and you can always see it, especially posts like mine, because like I make so many like satirical posts
Yeah.
or just sort of like where like I don't say the actual point, you're just supposed to infer it. But like the AI comments will come and be like, that is true. CEOs really are showing that like skiing when they're laying people off is a great way to spend their time, right? And I'm just like, okay, thanks for the comment.
I have noticed those, right? And I
Hmm.
wasn't sure if it was AI or just like someone's second language or something like that because it just looked
Just
completely
people you
off.
can tell it's AI, right? Again, because a lot of it is just like people you're connected to, like people I know in this space who I
Yeah.
go and I see at like these events, but when they comment on my posts, I'm just like, ugh, why are you even doing this to me?
Yeah.
So I guess the advice here is if you're a CEO or a senior manager, executive, like don't do this. Like please. Like that's
Yeah,
not what your employees are looking for. We're already feeling anxious about what's going on with AI. Is it going to replace our job? Then suddenly we start communicating with the CEO in AI. And like you brought up a great point, Mike. Like think about the times that you've had conversations either at like with your CEO. Say you've worked
Mhm.
at a larger company. You do come home and be like, yeah, I talked to Rhona or I talked to Jim and they had this is where the direction of the company and you're excited by it. You're never going to get that with an AI bot, no matter
Yeah,
what.
there's just no benefit to it. And like the next step is one-on-ones like this with your boss, right? And
Can
I
you
actually made a
imagine?
video making fun of that like a year ago. I like made a fake one-on-one meeting with like an AI boss. And it's just like all of a sudden it feels like, oh, we may actually be there where like managers can say, well, I can save 15 hours a week by not actually meeting with my employees unless like something comes up and just sending like my AI avatar. Like, where's this end with this kind of stuff?
Why is it only for leaders? When is it our turn as employees to be like, you know what? I can save so much time by not doing this. Here's my AI bot. Like, guys, this isn't going to work.
Yeah, we
No,
know the answer to that is because Mark Zuckerberg will just lay us off and continue to do his own AI bot. But you are correct.
that's a very good point.
All right. So it has been amazing, as always, to hang out with you guys. Thanks again to Talent Tech PR and Calendar PA for sponsoring. And anyone who's watching, thanks for watching us. If you haven't followed us on LinkedIn, why have you not followed us on LinkedIn? Please follow Purple Acorn on LinkedIn. We have live shows, we have a ton of podcasts, and you get notified about all of the new episodes and everything. It's a cool thing to do to follow Purple Acorn on LinkedIn. So please follow us. If you want more of Purple Acorn, head on over to purpleacornnetwork.com. And this show is also a podcast. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. It's literally everywhere. So thanks everyone for being here today.
Thank
Yeah, it's
you.
fun. Bye, everybody.
See you guys next week.